In 1985, I spent the winter in India in a little colony territory called Goa. And then in the spring, in April, I heard about the Buck story, the saga from hell. And I met with Michelle, who was telling the story. And when I heard it, I realized that there were several connections with various studies that I had made in my past with the Kabbalah and other aspects of comparative religion and symbology. And so I kept listening to the tape that I made over and over and over to amplify these connections. And about 2 weeks after I started doing that, I realized that it would be necessary to make drawings of this, to actually take a compass and make a circle and start drawing some lines. But at that time I had no compass, so I had to use peanut butter cans. So I did this, and I was so excited by it that I slept very little during that time. Then after about a month or so of making these drawings, I decided that I actually had to make the shadows, to go outside and to put up a pole and make shadows, which I did. And the drawings continued to expand. Then in September, I took these drawings which I had, and I came here to Finland and met Eeyore. First time that I'd actually talked to him, though I'd seen him many times in Goa and said hello, but the first time I'd actually talked to him. When he saw the drawings, he realized immediately that they were similar to the drawings that his Aunt Raquel had used when she was teaching him the saga, but part of the information which he had never been taught. At that time, we decided to start working together with Michelle to take this message to the world, which I felt was extremely important, perhaps the most important source of information available to the Western nations and eventually the Eastern nations since the year 1050, when, of course, hell was destroyed by the Swiss soldiers of Pope Leo IX. After working on these drawings for approximately 3 years, you must understand that they are still very incomplete. But if developed further, and if interested academic people work with me or by themselves on it, it's possible it would develop the logic patterns which underlie our culture and which are contained in the words in which we use, regardless of the language in which we use. So now let's go over and take a look at the drawings. So here we have a graphic representation of the ring, and we know from Eeyore that Frey had one ring in his head, one clock in his head, which allowed him to make sounds. These sounds allowed him to communicate with Freya and eventually their children. Now, this ring is made by, of course, first drawing this circle, and by moving the point of the compass up to here and drawing this circle. And at that time, you can draw the first line, which is the connection from the center to here, like this. Now we want to think of this as a clock, so this, of course, is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, so on around. Now this line, this first line, we put a little circle right here, so that we won't forget that what we did first is to make this ring. Then, at the other end of that line, we separate the circle, because, of course, the line does cut the circle in half. And when we cut the circle in half with this first line, we can bring it down like this, and we get a C shape and a D shape, like this. So we put the U, in root language U, in English O, at this end of the line, and we put the C on this side of the line and the D on that side of the line. And we call that the Uden line. because, of course, it goes O-D. You can also go D-O-C, like in doctor. Or you can go C-O-D, like in codfish. Now, as we continue to make these lines, we have to use the shadows of the sun and the moon. Because it's, of course, the rotation of the sun, of the Earth about the sun, and its daily rotation, which gives us these changing shadows. So the Stava tells us that we need to put a pole in the center of the circle. So if we go outside and we draw a circle on the ground and we put a pole in it, in the center, then as the Earth turns on its axis, the shadow will turn, and we get this origin of the way to keep time, which we then put these numbers around to make a clock. If we take the shadows of the moon, we get a completely different story. So now this C shape and this D shape look like quarter moons. So now here we have this circle with the pole in the center, and we have identified this point as the point of Scorpio. So now, at Scorpio, which is roughly October 23rd, when the sun moves into Scorpio, if we go out on the quarter moon closest to that timing, and we take the shadow line, we'll find out that this Udin line is exactly north and south. We can see the North Star if we stand at this pole and look over the tip of it, right above it. Now this is also 2 o'clock, this point of Scorpio. And in America we have this holiday on the second day of the second month, which we call Groundhog's Day. And this groundhog is coming out of his hole and looking at his shadow. And then if he sees it or not, we get 6 more weeks of winter. So if we do the same thing on February the 2nd, then we'll get a shadow line. But that shadow line will be east and west at 5 o'clock and at 11 o'clock. So we continue to make these shadow lines using the sun and the moon. And eventually we end up with this kind of a drawing. So now if we continue to take these shadow lines, these lines will eventually develop the letters of the alphabet around the circumference of the ring, which we'll talk about in a minute on a different drawing. We're told from the Bach Saga that the alphabet starts with the letter E. So since we started by putting the point of the compass here to make this ring, and then we moved up to here to make the second ring, this letter E, in English I, is going right here. So then, of course, here is coming A, B, C, D, E. Here's the F. The G is going here at 4 o'clock, though it's not shown. Here's the H, right here. H is sticking a little bit outside. This arm of the H is sticking a little bit outside. Here's the I, in root language E. Here's the J, coming down across like this and up. Here's the K, like this. The L is here. Here's the M. Here's the N, like this. Notice that the N touches this Udin line right here. Here's the O. Here's the P. Q's goes here, though it's not on there. Here's the R, right here. Here's the S. And you see that the top of the R is the bottom curve of the S. And here's the T. Here's the U sitting on top of the T. Here's the V. And then later we'll find out that the W is going here, sitting right on top of this E, this totem pole. And here the letter S, here the letter O, here the letter L, which identifies this circle as being Sol, S-O-L, the sun. And here's the P coming after the O, and P-O in Finnish means tree, but of course in English it's pole. Now, as the sun goes around this pole, it makes these shadows, which allows us to draw this. And you'll remember, in Paradise Time, the axis of the Earth was straight up and down. There was no tilt, so that there was an equal division then. Each one of these increments became equal. giving us this kind of a clock rather than the kind we have today. So now we have these equal increments, which we term the hours of the day, and each one of them is divided into 3 sections, because there's 30 degrees between each one of these hours, 10 degrees in each decadent. As we're constructing this drawing, we make these 12 circles around, which identify the hours of the day. We see that this one, right here, predominantly orange, comes at 10 o'clock and at 6 o'clock. And here at 10 o'clock we have the S, meaning sun. Here in the center we have the U, meaning ring. And here at 6 o'clock we have the L, meaning law. So we can say that when we say Sol, Roman god of the sun, we're saying sun, ring, law. Now the P here is connected to the ring, and we know from the Bach Saga that P means pole. In Finnish, however, in the Van language, P-O means tree. So because at the beginning, the sun was going around a tree. So you see how this rotation around this tree, or this pole, determines the ring law. Sun, ring, law. Or when you say pole, it's pole, ring, law. So now here we can see the letters a little more clearly as they go around this ring of sound. Now we can see that there are stellar patterns out here. Before, we just saw this part of it because it was full scale. So here we have 12 o'clock, here we have 1 o'clock, here we have 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, so on. And in between we have the astrological points, Sagittarius, Scorpio, so on. But getting back to the letters of the alphabet, you can see they're a little fatter, a little more developed. And we want to deal first with this A. A means Asur in root language, and the Asur are the people who live in Asgard, inside of this ring in Udenma, land of Uden. Now if you take this particular side of the A, and you take this line on down like this, you can see that it comes right to this point here, which is right in the middle of the N and the M. And we know that the M means moon in root language, moon in English, and that N means Nordstjerne, North Star, which signifies knowledge. So this left leg of the A is concerned with moon knowledge. Now we can take the right leg and we can come down with this line right here, and we come to the top of the F. And the top of the F, of course, meaning fro, seed or sprout, and also Frey and Freya. So it's one of the functions of Frey and Freya to learn this moon knowledge. Now, the cross of the A is going right straight over here to the R, cutting this bottom part of the R. And R means Ra. And Ra is the ruler over Vana. And Ra is using the moon, these shadow lines from the moon, for his directions. Because, of course, an R is exactly the same as a P, except it's got this little line on it. So since we know that P means pole, then when you say R, Ra, it means that he's using this pole with the shadow. And you can see that the shadow line is coming right down here to the law, to L, which means log, law. So Ra is determining the law of the Asur by using this pole, sun going around the pole, making these shadows, and consequently giving this development of lines. Connected and touching the A in root language, is the B, English B, root language Bay, and the meaning of Bay is Bori, castle. It's also Bjorn, bear, and Brost, meaning breast, like the woman, but the woman's breast. You can see how it looks just like a breast. So these Asur people in their castle up here, about 90 kilometers from where we are now, at Rasapuri, are going out there and looking at these shadows and determining the law. Now, if we come straight down from the B, this line which makes the forward part of the B, we come down here to the E, in English I. And of course, this is the only letter which is duplicated within the ring. We know that originally we started with this E here, right here in the center. So now down here we have another E. And this E is the first letter, and this E down here is the 10th letter. So if we, and a 1, of course, when you make the letter 1, it's the same like making an E or an I. And down here, with this E, we're at letter number 10. So when we go from this E to this E, going from 1 to 10, we're using these basic letters to establish this law of the pole and the ring. Now, if we come back over here to the R, we can see that this line going here, making this cross arm on the Aser, and coming down through the B to the E, and then back over here to the R, can give us this name Ra B. And the Ra Bs are getting this information from Ra, and they're taking them out to the world and giving them to the Yarler class people. J, of course, meaning Yarler. And we can see also that this triangle that's made is an equilateral triangle, and that it identifies the fire signs. Here's Sagittarius, here's Leo, and here's Aries. Now in English, you know, this E and this J, when you write them in small letters, there are these two dots over them. Now you can see that this J on here is making a scalene triangle. 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. And we already know that the L, log, law in English, is a 90-degree angle. So these Yarls are using this scalene triangle, which is half of an equilateral triangle, to make this law and to carry it out to the Yarler and Karler class people all over the world. Now let's go back to the U. Here's the U, here's the S, and here's the T. In root language, Oost, O-S-T, means east. So U, S, Te, in root language, means east. And we know that this point is the east, right here at 11 o'clock. Now we see that the U, right here, is sitting right on top of the T. The T is making kind of a hammer shape, right? Because it's Tur. Tur has this hammer. Now, just as this shadow line on the R is coming down to this side of the law, we can see also that this line right here is coming down to this side of the law. Because we know that the letter Q means quadrat, and quadrat means mathematics. So moon knowledge of the ring and the pole is making mathematics, quadrat. And Ra is using, with the help of the sun and the moon, this knowledge to construct this pattern which produces these letters and all of the words that we use. So now we can go over here at the day, in English D, which means daytime, and we know that E means ache, or oak tree, and that F means fro, seed or sprout. So we know that the day, in English D, means daytime, and we can see that from 10 o'clock, where the sun is, that this ring coming around over here, which was the second ring that we made, comes over here to 2 o'clock and makes the daytime. So the sunshine is shining on the tree, the oak tree. The oak tree is dropping its seeds down to the ground. G means grund in root language, or ground in English. And this sprout is coming up, which is Freya and Freya. And we see that Frey, the cross arm of the F coming right over here, is coming directly to the pole, to the P pole, and that Freya, the top of the F line, is coming directly over here to the Q quadrat. So Frey and Frey are working together to produce this mathematical pattern. Ho, root language Ho, H in English, meaning hell, home, and heart, is under the ground. And you can see also that this arm of the H, as I said before, is coming outside the circle, just like this little part of the S is outside the circle. So the sun, shining in hell, shine is an SH, is giving us these basic lines which allows us to come outside of this particular part of the drawing and make this stellar part. Now let's come back to the E and this fire triangle. And we see that this is at 5 o'clock, and we know that this particular circle, going from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, is identifying the planet Mars. Because right here in the center is the M. If we cut this triangle in half, this raw triangle in half, we see that we have an M here. It goes up to the A and down to the R, S, which identifies Mars. This line going up here, of course, being the arrow on the symbol for Mars. In the same way, we can start up here at the east, where the origin is, and Vonner, V means Vonner, all the people outside of the ring. And we come over here to the E at 3 o'clock, down to the N at 7 o'clock, back up to the U at 11 o'clock, and then the S gives us Venus. And this is making another equilateral triangle, which is balanced with the raw B triangle. And Venus, of course, is the goddess of love. So now, by the construction of this, these rings and these lines, producing these letters of the alphabet, we can combine these regular patterns of triangles and squares and whatnot to produce all of the words that we use. And each of these words and the images that it makes in the mind as we put these identifying words with each letter produces patterns of logic, which is the law. So now we'll change to another one where we'll see the numbers. Okay. So now here we see the numbers. The 1, of course. Here's the 2 coming up here from the sun, down through the daytime right here, on down, like this, and across. The 3. Each one of these has to come at its regular place on the clock, yeah? Here's the 3. Here's the 4 at the ground. 5 down here at Mars. 6 for the sun, and so on. But you see, as you trace them out like so, then they're combining with each other. 3 I didn't fill in. 4 isn't filled in. But you can see the 5 pretty clearly. Here's the 6. Here's the sun ring going around the pole. Here's the top part of the 6, which identifies the totem pole in here. 7 is green, not completely filled in. The 8 is the biggest number of the curved numbers. The 8 is the biggest, making this kind of infinity circle going through 10, 2, 4, and 8 o'clock. And then the 9, of course, is here, like this at 9 o'clock. And each one of these numbers is connected with a planetary orbit. So you can see that the numbers and the planets and the letters should all be together. And when we put them together like that, then in the center of this pattern will be pictures. And it will be the pictures that are in there, which change optically because of your eyes, making these optical illusions, are creating by the form. This F over here on the ground, and this line right over here to the U, the Udin, the ring, and this FO is making the form, using the 4. And we're focusing, FO focusing. So now this kind of a pattern is called a reticulum, and it has to do, because of the root radical, with the retina of the eye. And the retina of the eye cannot focus on this exactly, because as these little lines come together and cross, makes the retina hard to focus, and the colors change. And as the colors change, they make this optical illusion. And so if we put all the letters and the numbers and these various triangles and everything together, we'll get these pictures inside here, in this original circle right here. So you can see that the 1 right here, going up like this big 1, is going up here and identifying this point of Sagittarius and down here to Leo at 5 o'clock. And on that is this B, and here we can see the big B, like in Bumblebee, or Bugs Bunny, or BB. So now, if we turn this around, go back to the original one, we can do a little more with this Venus. Venus being the god of love. Here's the V, here's the E, and down here to the N, and up to the U and the S. Gives us this green triangle right here, this green equilateral triangle, which is Venus, the goddess of love. And of course, at 11 o'clock and 7 o'clock is this circle, mostly green, this cross down below, which is the symbol for Venus. And Venus is coming together with Mars, Mars being at 5 o'clock. And she's producing harmony, the child of their union. And her son, Venus's son, is called Cupid. And he's the guy that's going around with this bee, this bow, and shooting arrows into everyone to make them either fall in love or to fall out of love. So now if you do Cupid, here's the C, here's the U, here's the P, here's the I, and here's the D. And Cupid is making this blue square, which, with the green triangle of Venus, his mother, is coming together here in the east at the point of the U and the V, the origin of Vonner. Rendition with the letters and the numbers all put together. You can see that the Roman numerals locate the places on the clock going around, just like on all clocks. And here at the 1, you can see the big 1, Arabic numeral. And here coming around like this, at 2 o'clock is the 2, coming on down, across. Here's the big 3, like so. Each of the large Arabic numerals has to touch at its proper position on the clock. Here's the 4 in violet, 5 in red, 6 orange, 7 green, not filled in the center, 8 is yellow, 9 is blue. Bottom of the 9 is part of the 5. And in the center, developing from that, we have the letters of the alphabet. Here's the A, B, C, D, A, F, G, H, I, Y, K, L, M, N, U, P, Q, R, S. Notice that the S and the R are together. T, U, V, and not used now, but appearing here, the W. So now let's take this first letter, Aser. You see we can put this triangle right on the equator, on the equal line. Divides the circle in half horizontally. Here's the E, here's the Q. And you see up here that this line right here is the cross arm on the A, the A. And it's coming over here to the R. So this line is making Ra. It's also the same as Aser, A-S-A-R. So now let's go back to the second place, and we can see here is the Uden line. farthest corner at the ground. Now, if you notice on the little U here, inside is this perfect square. Okay. So now this triangle is half of that square. So now if we put this little line here, one side of this square, if we put the triangle on like this, we'll see that whereas the Uden line is north and south, when we do it like that, we get the east-west line, which is VI, root radical for vision. But if we go like this, and put this little line like that, then we get the root radical VOC, for vocal. Now each of these large numbers corresponds with a planetary orbit. The 3 with Saturn, 4 with Jupiter, 5 with Mars, 6 with the Sun, 7 with Venus, 8 with Mercury, and 9 with the Moon. So using this triangle, which is part of the 4, you remember that the 4 is making the form FOUR is 4, this shape. This shape. Form is FORM. Ra is using the F and the O and the moon to make the form. And first we have to deal with these 3 squares. 3 primary squares, regular squares in this circle, which are Jupiterian. So now if we put this square like so, on knowledge, on the N, on knowledge, the L is the law, yeah? The 90 degree is the law. So if we put the L on knowledge, then at the other end we get TH. TH. The only 2 letters in the ring which have the same image of heart. T has the meaning heart and heart friend. Your heart friend. Here at this T. And Thor's hammer is the penis. H has the meaning hell, the North Pole, before the Ice Age. Hjarta, heart, and hem, home. Home is where the heart is. So these 2 letters, T and H, have the same meaning of heart. The only 2 letters that have the same meaning in the ring. Yes, the letter Q means quadrat, mathematics. And when we say math, we're saying M-A-T-H, ma-T-H. Land of the T-H, math, math.
All right.
So now when we put this 90 degree angle on the N and we have this TH, we know that in ancient Egypt, the god of, the scribe of the gods was called Thoth. He was responsible for hieroglyphics, the science of writing. And his name is Thoth, Thoth. And these letters, again, have the similar meaning of heart. Now, if we take this word heart in English, it's spelled H-E-A-R-T. We have the H at the beginning, the T at the end, and in the middle we have ear, which can be switched around to be era. But if we put the H on the front of ear, then we have hear. And then we put the T at the end, we have heart. So we can say this little thing, ear, hear, heart. Then if we put another H on the end of heart, we have hearth, the fireplace in the home around which the family congregates. Then if we take the H off of the front of hearth, we have earth, which is ear with the TH connected at the end. The earth is hearing these two hearts together. Then if we take the ear and the H off, we have art. So then we can make this little saying, ear, hear, heart, hearth, earth, art. Because when you hear another person's heart, they become your heart friend. So it's necessary to put these THs together, as in theory, theology, anthropology. So now let's go to this kind of a triangle. And we can put this again on the raw line. It's an equilateral triangle. There are 4 of these corresponding to the elemental signs. And this one, the fire signs, Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo, is giving this raw line. And down here we have the B, Ra B. Or we can have Rib, R-I-B. Or we can have B-I-R for birth. Or we can have B-R-I for bridge. And then we can turn it like this to make the opposing triangle, and we get Venus, V-E-N-U-S. Then we can take half of it, and we can put it on here like this, and you can see that this big triangle is exactly the same as this J, Yi in root language, which means Jarl. And the Rabis are taking the information system from Rasapuri to the Jarl class people in the tribes all over the world. Now, if you put this triangle on here like this, you'll see that we have A-I-M for aim. And sure enough, we can see the little arrow point here from the Mars triangle, which is red. Because if we turn the triangle over like this, we have M-A-R-S, Mars. Again, pointing at this little arrow, which shows you the planetary symbol for Mars. Now, of course, when we're back like this, we can always also say, I am. Or we can say, Mia. Or we can say, Ami. We can take these 2 little triangles, which are exactly the same, and we can put them together like this, like that, and you'll see that they delineate the orange circle in this particular case, at the center of which is the Udin, the letter O. And here's the S, and here's the L, showing that this orange circle is Sol, the sun. If we do it like this, picking up the original E, the totem pole, which goes here at 12 o'clock, then we have I-S-O, which is ISO. An isohel is any point on a line which receives an equal amount of sunshine. Or we can also go O-S-I, like Osiris in the Greek, which in the Egyptian was the name for Asur. The Egyptian name for Osiris, Lord of the Dead, was Asur.
Just a minute. Let me just trip on this for a minute. Okay, go.
Now you've noticed that around the edge are these uncolored points, which are the stellar points, because the K is a combination of two of these triangles. And when we say sky, it's S-K-Y. So we have to use these like so. To identify the sky points. Directly across from Frey and Freya. Here's Freya. Directly across is the Q, quadrat. Directly across from Frey, the pole. Putting the pole center of the circle, making the mathematics. Ra using the sun, and the horn of the moon to determine the placement lines. Notice that the U is sitting on top of the T, making the word two, meaning you. Two. Two people. You have to have two before you can say you. Origin. Origin is in the East. In the root language, East is U-S-T, Ust. It's the point of origin is in the East, the origin of Vanner. The W, of course, means double origin, between Vanner and Asser. And the English language is coming from a combination of the Asser language and the Vanner language. It's double origin. And English is using the W, though the Asser and the Van people do not use it. The moon, of course, has 3 points. The Se, Shara, Mon, and Ra is using the moon. This blue circle represents the moon. It's using the moon to make the Ras. The moon has 3 phases. It has new moon, crescent moon, Shiva moon. It has quarter moon, and it has full moon. 30, 60, 90. Like this triangle. Remembering always, of course, that the law is the 90 degrees. Log. You haven't had an opportunity yet to really learn any of these meanings of the letters. And here's the O. And here's the L.
So.
Yeah, so now this ring is making S-O-L with the O in the center. Now if you put the P in the ring, then the sun is going around and it's making the shadow on this pole, which is making the Q. And if you know that N means knowledge, and North Pole, then you can say N-O-P-Q. Knowledge of the ring and the pole is quadrat. Quadrat means mathematics.
This is sundial, the ring of this pole, right? And at the top of the world in hell, the sun never went overhead, it went around. So it was always casting a shadow here. Whereas where we live, it would be 12 o'clock when there was no shadow. But here, the sun's going around like this at the top of the world. So it was always casting a shadow at one place or the other. Like our moon, at nighttime, you watch it go across the sky instead of over.
So it was always forming a Q.
Always forming, yeah, a Q, just wherever, which way you want to look at it.
So.
The women have the quadrants, they have the mathematics, because they did this whole astrology situation. These crystal balls. They could go up and actually put a black dot everywhere there was a white spot. And then when they open the room up, you can see the whole star system on the ceiling.
Run that by again. How did they
They put it like a dome.
Yeah.
Okay? And they had this crystal ball.
What do you mean putting
You
a
see
black
sunrise.
dot?
They just
Well, when there's light, in which the room's dark, you close all the windows up so it's dark in here. And you just have this one candle which represents Udin. When it hits this prisma, it shoots this astrology. So you'd have these white dots everywhere there was in the star system. And so you could go up with a black pen in this dark room, and everywhere there was a white dot, you could black it out. And then you could blow the candle out, open the door up, and let the light in. And then you'd have little black dots all over the whole ceiling and everything. This was a star system. Because they could never see the stars on the top of the world. It was daylight all the time. But they knew all about the stars. But here, the sun was going around and around and around, and it was always daylight, see.
And the origin of the crystal balls?
They made these things. This logic on paper. The story is a little different.
But astrologic. Tro is again, can be truer, right? You can rearrange the letters. Any way in which the letters can be arranged is valid. So we say as, tro, logic. We're also saying the logic of Tur. This whole
The
concept of
logic
power,
has
Tur.
to come from the astro.
Actually, they
Yeah?
say, yeah.
Then people, the first thing when these first people were living, the only thing they could see was this world and the stars. Yeah, and that's what was needed to orientate. You need stars.
It came through the sperm, through fair. Was in this information from the very beginning.
I heard the question posed yesterday and never heard an answer. How does the magnetic North Pole fit in with the current North Pole, with the previous North Pole?
Well, there was only one maypole, Ma pole, like the maypole dance. And Ma is the earth and pole is the pole. It's the earth pole. And so the day we have this one here, which we're kind of wobbling, we're off the course in a sense. And we also have this North Pole, so we have two poles. But in the beginning, this hell is 30 degrees off the top, so it was actually one maypole in the beginning.
Have you heard of the wobble?
yeah, the Earth is
Wobble and the well,
Where's the magnetic
because we're not on magnetic North
pole?
Pole,
Yeah, you
because
navigate
of the
on
tilt.
magnetic north at a certain direction.
Because we've
It's the top of
tilted
the world
30
now.
degrees, we
Our-
wobble.
Because we're not, hell's not the top of the
So
world.
our relationship
We have a North
to everything
Pole
is
right now.
shifting about 30 degrees.
Yeah, I looked on the map yesterday and the magnetic North Pole is at 30 degrees.
Yeah,
Over in the
exactly.
Canadian side somewhere.
Sounds of the alphabet, right?
Who's the
Well, yes,
heart?
but
Who's the
just-
heart? Who's the love? That is the most easiest to understand for a child. For sure.
For sure,
A pure child.
Yeah.
from love.
for sure.
Like the child is always going
Bottom
to the
line,
mother or
essential
the
number
father
one.
and lying on their heart. Yeah.
To get back to the
Rhythm.
rhythm.
Steady rhythm. He's all excited, but he knows that theirs is
Good, strong, mature pump.
it's home. Select out a myth, say the one that I'm using. To begin with is Cupid and Psyche, relationship of love and the human soul. If you select out the myth and then use those names, and on the ring you follow those line patterns with that particular name, such as Cupid or Venus or whatever, and then you put in the proper colors, it actually gives you the archetypal images associated with those myths in an optical illusory form so that they change in front of your eyes. Because the shades, like a shadow is really a shade, yeah? So the shades of the colors create this effect in the retina of your eye, which gives you this optical illusion thing. That's actually what the forefront of my investigation is now. These are preliminary works that I did a year or so ago on that.
Really? That's amazing.
Like here's the 1, here's the 2, 3,
Yes.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And of course the center ring is the 0.
I see. I see.
Now see,